My name is Joe Simpson. I am a Elementor leader and organizer here in Southern California in the Santa Cruz Valley. I am so excited to present our next speaker. Let's give a great welcome to Julien Elis, who will present why pen and paper is your most valuable tool. Take it away, Julien.
Hi, everyone. Hi, folks. Good to see everybody. And I come here today with good news and with bad news. Now, the good news, everybody knows it already. And the good news is that Elementor absolutely rocks. In fact, I was just in the business networking room a couple minutes back, and we were saying how Elementor has absolutely freed us as website creators. And there's really not much you can't do with Elementor and with the ecosystem of plugins that come with Elementor now. So Elementor rocks. You can do a whole bunch of stuff with it. You can make very complex sites, dynamic sites, etc. But now that we have all of this power as web creators, with great power comes great, and you can tell me what you think the next part is. If you said responsibility, that's true, but also in this case comes a lot of confusion. You can make these amazing websites. You can make them dynamic. You can make them multi-user. You can make them multilingual e-commerce, et cetera, but that makes complicated to figure out how you're going to do these sites. So here, this brings me to the bad news. And the bad news is we're actually going to have to use our brains. When you have so many possibilities, we're going to have to sit down and think a little bit about, what we're going to do. I say this because basically I've been making websites for a long time, and the power that Elementor has given me has at first confused me. And then once I've gotten my workflow set up, now has given me great power. So preconceiving, the whole point of this is preconceiving your website is absolutely essential. Hi, Verdi in the Netherlands. If you're able to do this correctly, this will save you tons of time, and it will make your clients happy. Very briefly about me. So I'm passionate about the web, have been since I heard the word internet. That was in 1985 or something. Made my first website in 98. So this is like the total Gen X moment for Elementor. I've been helping small businesses boost their businesses online for 23 years. And I also do other stuff. I work in the wellness industry, and I'm, among other things, the creator and the organizer of the European Massage Championship. So before we go on, I want to ask you if it's already happened to you that you go through project and you finish the project per requirements, you've been talking to your client and so on, and you get to the end and you have those client logos at the bottom, and your client calls you up and says, by the way, before we launch, I would like those logos. We need a company profile for all of those. And you're like, excuse me, we're launching tomorrow. What are we talking about here? We've never talked about this thing, right? And so there's this new requirement that comes up, and you get frustrated with the client because you're thinking to yourself, we've been working on this for 2 months and he never mentioned anything, right? Now, what's the client thinking? The client's thinking, that guy's a webmaster and we've been working on this for 2 months, and he didn't even think of like proposing that or whatever. So there's this frustration that can arise. Now, who's already run into something similar to this, where some sort of requirement was not properly explained before? Thank you, Gerard. And I suspect there are, I think, 59 of us here. I suspect this has happened to 59 of us. Right, exactly. Thank you, MP. When has it not? So this is a very common thing. Now, what is it that happened here? Very briefly, I have this friend in Milano. His name is Andrea Barufaldi, and he did me a great favor. This book, Customer-Centered Products, Creating Successful Products Through Smart Requirements Management, he did me a super favor. He read this book so I didn't have to. And he boiled it down to 4 main things to be aware of, which constitute this post-it here, which is the longest standing post-it on my whiteboard, and which is beware of unasked, wrong facts, omissions, and inconsistent requirements. Now I'm going to focus particularly on 1 and 3 here. And in the example that I was given before with these company profiles, this hypothetical situation, unasked questions and omissions. The creator did not ask the question, and the client did not omitted to talk about that, right? Manuela, you're very, very lucky. So before we go on, real quickly, can someone tell me if they know who Socrates is? If you do, give me a thumbs up. And can somebody tell me if they know who Colombo is, the detective Colombo is? If you do, there you go, MP. We are connected. If you know Colombo, give me a smiley face. If you know Socrates, give me a thumbs up. If you know both, give me a thumbs up and a smiley face. I want to know if I'm talking. Thank you. All right, everybody knows Colombo and Socrates. Now, these 2 guys have something in common. Just a little bit about Socrates. Socrates, if you know a little bit about his life, what he would do is, besides his philosophy, he would actually go into the city and he would just talk to people, which is frankly the greatest job in the world. He would talk to people, and by talking to people, through dialogue, he considered he would get to universal truths, right? And that was later called maiotics. And maiotics is the Socratic method of eliciting knowledge by a series of questions and answers. So dialogue, right? And another definition is, from this dialogue comes the word maiotics, the spiritual midwife. So what does a midwife do? A midwife is the person in the hospital who helps a baby be born. And in this case, with Socrates, it's an idea be born, right? Through dialogue. So what does he have in common with Colombo? Why is this interesting to us? What did Colombo do? Colombo would kind of do something similar in his detective work. He would, kind of play stupid. He would tell people, but I don't understand. Like, if you say that then it necessarily follows that you were not there that day, et cetera, right? So through this dialogue and kind of playing stupid, he would get to the truth again, right? So why does this interest us? I think you've figured it out by now. The point I'm getting to is that you're going to have to talk to your clients. And when I say talk to your clients, I mean talk to your clients. I mean ask questions. Day in and day out, you got to ask questions. And very often, this period that comes before the actual website development, you have not touched WordPress, you have not opened browser, you're not even close to opening Elementor at this point. You got to figure out what they need, right? So, and by the way, if you're in pre-sales mode, meaning if you're talking to a prospective client, not a client, this type of interest in asking the client what the actual objective is will get that client in the mood, that prospective client in the mood of working with you. Like, they will like, I do not know one client who doesn't like to talk about his or her project and who doesn't appreciate somebody who's going to help them get to that point where they're going to be able to describe the objective they want to get to. So In my case, what I do on the first call with a client, I always tell them that I'm going to be asking them a truckload of questions, more than what they're comfortable with, but that I'll be there, that I'm going to help them through this process, but I'm going to ask them a whole bunch of questions, and I let them know that. And that's very, very, that has turned out to be very important and very positive for me. Now, all of these conversations, all of the meetings, all of these phone calls, here's what you do. You take a pen and paper and you note everything down. Absolutely everything down on a sheet of paper. There's no exceptions, not a single phone call where you don't note everything down. And you will be able to find inconsistent requirements. You will lower omissions. You will get rid of wrong facts. And this is how it all starts. You get rid of and ask questions. All right. So that was step one, maiotiques. You got to think of yourself as either Socrates or Colombo. Just one more thing. Exactly. MP. Think of yourself as Socrates or Colombo when you're with a client. And again, they will appreciate it. Trust me on this. So what is step two? Step two is, again, you guessed it, a pen and paper. You still haven't touched Elementor. You still haven't touched WordPress. You haven't opened your browser. You're still with your pen and paper. And now you're going to start to jot down, once you've gotten to your requirements, now you're going to draw out your website. Okay, so the objectives you want to be able to get out from your clients. Now, I'm not going to go into detail for this, but you got to figure out the objectives, the commercial objectives, the traffic objectives, the functional objectives. You got to figure out how their website places itself within the online ecosystem. How does it serve social media and vice versa, et cetera, right? What exists already, what needs to be done, and so on. So this is a first draft for me where I had to cross everything out here and start again. And this is still only just a second draft. And here are the really the basics of what you're going to write down. Again, I don't want to get too specific, but you're going to want to write down the roles. Okay, so some of you maybe know this already, but some of you may not know this perfectly yet. The roles are sets of things which a person can do or not do on a website. And there are two roles that always exist, and that's admin, which is you and or your client, right? And then there's the logged out user. The logged out user is the person who types in the thing or finds it on Google, and they come on your website. They haven't registered. They haven't bought anything. They're the logged out clients. Those two roles always exist. And then inside, there's a whole bunch of other roles that can exist. Obviously, customer, editor, people who can post things on the site, people who have bought things on the site, et cetera, et cetera. And all of these people will have, all of these sets of people will have different capabilities on the website, right? So you want to think out all of the people who are going to interact with your website, right? Those are the roles. And then you want to draw out your pages. And you're going to do that in a super simple manner. You don't have to get super fancy. Yes, you can use Figma. Yes, you can use XD. There's a whole bunch of, obviously, Sketch, et cetera, but I strongly advise, in fact, forget it. I'm ordering you to do it on paper first. Do it on paper first. You will save a whole bunch of time. Here we go. Okay. So in this slide, as you can see, I'm getting a little closer to something that looks just slightly more organized than my previous notes. And I got something of a structure that's starting to come out with the different roles, which are in green: admin, free client, paying client, et cetera, logged out user. And over here in these notes, there's another notion that I wanted to let you guys know about, which is the notion of crud. Can you give me a thumbs up if you've heard there's another acronym that can be used too, but do you know CRUD? Who knows about CRUD? It's super simple. Margot, thank you. All right, Joe, Andreas. CRUD is a super simple acronym that means create, read, update, delete. Those 4 things are the entirety of what anybody can do on the internet. I'm not talking about the metaverse. But CRUD is something which is going to be super important when you're determining your roles and what each role can do on each page, right? And if you can pre-think who can CRUD or not CRUD, or only read and not update, who cannot delete, et cetera, then you're going to have your roles set out. Again, I don't want to get into specifics, but this is one of the main kind of like meta things you want to be able to figure out for each page, what each role can do on them, but through the prism of CRUD. Okay. And for those of you who don't have these concepts, they will sink in over time. All right, so in this set of notes, I'm getting a little closer to having something properly described. And what you see here on the left, besides my cat's bum, is the list of necessary plugins. When you write out everything that everybody will be able to do, and you start looking at and you verbally describe how your website works, you're going to be able to do this great thing, which has been a great discovery for me these past few years, which is you're going to be able to pre-think all of the plugins you need, meaning you can cost it for yourself, you can cost it for your client, right? Instead of telling him or her halfway through the project, by the way, you're going to have to get WooCommerce memberships, and that's like $299 a year, and right? You don't want to be in that situation. So if you need, you can, by pre-thinking, preconceiving your website on paper, you're going to be able to do that and give a proper tender to your client, to your prospective client. So here is the result of one of the latest websites, which I did. And what you're seeing here actually is not for the user, this is for the admin. And this is a custom admin interface where the client it's for an advertising agency. What the guy can do now is he can create a new client, create a new client without any pictures. And these are the 4 custom post types. And here he can see, he can edit, and he can delete. Now, who can tell me what notion we just looked at before? All this is very simple. It's CRUD. He can create, he can read, he can update, and he can delete. Okay, so for this site, actually, this is the website itself. It's an advertising agency in Paris. Let me just get my slides in order here. So here, these clients here, these creations that they do, my client, who's the agency owner, can very simply go here and create them. To get to this point, this was about 2 to 3 months talking with him day in and day out. Well, day in and day out, I'm maybe exaggerating, but because here's a secret. When you start a project, you don't know what the client wants. But the dirty little secret is he or she doesn't know either, or they don't fully know, right? And that's why, again, you're going to have to talk, you're going to have to write down, and you're going to have to make sense of what they're asking. Let me get this out of the way. So there's always a yeah, but, right? There's always someone who says, yeah, but. So, yeah, but I don't own a pen. If you don't own a pen, call me. I'll get you a Bic over. Using paper is bad for the environment. I gotcha. All right. There's something which you may or may not have heard about, which is, so I actually use this, which is an A3, nice big A3 notebook. And there's my pen, me trying to do product photography and miserably failing if you look at the shade. Now, if you don't want to use a pen and paper, if you just can't stand it, okay, I get it. You can use something like Notion.so. Now, if you haven't heard of Notion.so yet, it is to note-taking what Elementor is to WordPress. It has completely, it's made note-taking, brought it absolutely to another level. You can share notes, etc. It's way better than Google Keep or all of that stuff. It's just absolutely amazing. So check out Notion.so if you're going to have to do this digitally. If you don't want to use a pen and paper, you can use Notion.so. So to resume, you use it on any project when you're doing form of project management, and project management means doing stuff, right? On any project, you use a pen and paper and you write down all of your clients' requests over the phone calls and the meetings. And then you're going to jot down the roles, the main pages, you draw them out, and who can do what on each page. And this will enable you. If you can do this, frankly, half of your work is done. After that, developing a complex website is just a breeze. If you do this before, it is a breeze, trust me. If you do it, this will enable you to create awesome projects and complex projects. You will save a whole bunch of time. You will know where you're going and you'll know what you're doing. And I know everybody here has been in those times when, you know, your categories are not done, your taxonomies are not the right way. It should have been another type of field, et cetera, et cetera. So if you know where you're going and you know what you're doing, you'll be saving time. You can properly cost your project for your client. You can properly list and cost your plugins. You can lower the risk of omissions and deception. You can make your clients happy, and you can make yourself happy. I realized I didn't look at the questions as we were going on. Got all into my thing. So the message is just real simple. Anything you do, pen and paper. And don't hesitate to be in touch. I use WhatsApp a lot. You know, I'm in Europe. We do that. So you can screenshot this if you want, and you can shoot me an email too if you like.
Awesome, Julien. Thank you so much for the great presentation. What part of Europe are you in?
Thanks to you. Sorry,
I cut out a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you went out just for a small moment.
Yeah. What part of Europe are you?
Were there any salient questions that came up? I didn't quite have time to look.
Definitely. Do you present pen and paper ideas or concepts to your client, or is it just part of your thought process?
Good question. I've done it once, and the result was not good. Like, she looked at me like I was a little. I've been through that. I would not recommend doing it unless you're great at drawing or whatever, which I'm not. But I wanted to come up with those concepts and kind of shoot them off the client, but that was asking too much of her, and so I stopped doing that.
Okay. The next question from Ivan is, how do you deal with clients that have high demands regarding starting functionality that you know in advance that will be useless? In parentheses, it says, I want it all and I want it now. Any approach to explain they should start with basic options and then upgrade as time passes?
Yeah, well, my kind of key phrase for that is, if you've got the experience to be able to say, honestly to your client, okay, that's going to take a couple more weeks, and you're going to want to throw in an extra K or 2K or whatever it's going to be for that functionality. However, you may want to keep that for V2. And that sentence for me works like a charm. Like when they get all excited and they see everything you can do, if you say, you know what, keep that for V2, launch without it first, and then we'll see if it's absolutely necessary. They also realize you're kind of saving them money and time too. So if you can orient them, you know, that's part of like kind of the consulting side of things, right? You want to be able to orient them on what's absolutely necessary versus what's kind of like just kind of desirable or a gadget. It's so you as the web creator should orient your client in terms of, you know, what should be for V1 versus V2, 3.
Okay, great. And the final question is, do you use timelines and spreadsheets to hit different milestones agreed with clients?
Well, yes, I do. I pre-think all the timeline too, all necessary resources needed, money and time, etc. I put that down consistently on all of my projects. I've been on time and the client isn't. Either on the payment or on the, you know, that thing they wanted to write about their company, or on, you know, they wanted to set out categories. They've got a they want to give you the categories. They're going to be writing them out. They say, you know, give me a couple days, I'm going to get that to you consistently. If you with Elementor, the thing is you're going to breeze through all of this stuff, especially if you've pre-thought this thing right. So then you're going to give work to your client. There's always a part of the work which is for your client. And typically in my case, and I'm not trying to boast, I'm just saying, like, oftentimes they're the ones who are like holding back the project rather than me. So in the end, the timeline, the important thing is you hit your deadlines, and then the client or the person with who you're working with in the company, you just kind of hope they hit theirs.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. It looks like that's it for questions. Will you be in the networking room afterwards, or I see you have your contact information up on screen?
Yeah, I'm going to hang out a little. I had fun chatting earlier. It's kind of neat being in there. So yeah, I'll be in those rooms, and I'll also look at the other presentations, which I thought were real good. So so don't hesitate to be in touch with me in these rooms or by those means, which are up on the screen.
Thanks, Julien. It was great hearing your presentation, and I'm glad to meet you.
Likewise. Thanks to everybody for listening and for your attention. Take care, everyone. Write everything down.